blank blob over there is Coach Thorpe's screen. Pardon the technical difficulties on his end. We aren't going to get to see the tank top, the muscly, just tone, just tan body of Coach Thorpe this morning. I know he was outside this weekend and trying to get extra bronze today, and that's unfortunate. We're not going to get his video. There's Jarod subbing in a little bit earlier today because of the video issues, but hey, we were going to get to you anyway later in the show, so might as well just bring you out of the bullpen now.
How is everybody?
I hope everyone's doing great. I'm doing great. It was a good day of NBA basketball yesterday, although lots of injuries to get through. The Zion thing, which we'll get to off the top. Dwayne Wade is now a Utah Jazz part of the ownership group, which caused a lot of weird feelings in Miami because, like, why you got to go to Utah to Salt Lake to get an ownership stake? Couldn't you done that in Miami? That happened over the weekend. And Steph Curry dropped 47. We'll get to that later in the show. But off the top, we got to talk about Jarod. Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson played the Knicks yesterday in Madison Square Garden. He was asked about the game after the game, obviously, during his Zoom call. And here's what happened. Or Judy, I don't know if we can get to that, but it's the most amazing clip here.
I'm glad you asked that, actually. I mean, New York is the mecca of basketball. I love playing. I love playing here. When I played here in college, and this is my first time playing here in the pros, and I mean, this atmosphere, you know, whether they're cheering for you, whether they're booing for you, it's amazing. Honestly, I think outside of New Orleans, obviously, I think this might be my favorite place to play outside of New Orleans. I can't even lie to you. I can't lie to you.
All right, thanks, Z.
Bruce.
Yo, Jarod, have you seen Zion this happy in the NBA yet?
No, David Griffin's shitting a brick right now in New Orleans. Like, oh, crap. Just what I need. I mean, look, I was fortunate enough to actually cover his college game at Madison Square Garden. And, you know, as much as the Knicks are who they are and their whole issues, and sorry, Randy, we can get into that at another time. There is something about every NBA player says the same thing, right? They feel a certain kind of way when they touch the hardwood floor at MSG. And it's interesting because, and you've been there, of course, Tom, as well. And it sounds hokey, but I do, when you're there, you feel the history of that building, right? You're like, damn, like major boxing matches happen here, major game, like you feel that when you walk into that building, and there is something historic about it. So, you know, kudos to him for liking to play there. RJ Barrett, him, and Julius Randle, that is the Knicks Big Three 2.0. Get ready.
It was so cool to see Zion. Like, I don't know, it seems like this season, maybe it's just sapped a lot of joy around the league, and having, you know, Fred VanVleet talked about it at length in his press conference over the weekend. But it was so cool to see him look like a kid again. And we were reminded of the fact he's 20 years old. He can't even buy a beer or a hurricane on Bourbon Street yet. Like, he can't get a beer at Madison Square Garden after the game, even if he wanted to. Well, legally. But it was so refreshing to see is that you can get starstruck by Madison Square Garden. And now, of course, this is a huge story because it's Zion and it's the Knicks. And it's also a franchise, the New Orleans Pelicans, that just traded a couple of years ago Anthony Davis, the franchise pillar, to the Lakers of all teams. Like, I remember, Jarod, early in the season when Anthony Davis signed with Rich Paul, and the whole storyline was, oh, LeBron is behind this, and he's going to orchestrate, pull the strings behind the scenes, and get Anthony Davis, the brow, out of New Orleans and to the Lakers. And people were like, nah, man, the Pelicans would never do that. Ownership would never do that, considering all the tampering that was going back and forth with LeBron and AD earlier in the season. And then sure enough, fast forward a few months later, and they execute a deal, and Anthony Davis is a Laker. So part of me, Jarod, is like, ha, 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 Knicks fans, like always the bridesmaid, never the bride with these free agents or these stars. And then you kind of wonder, all right, if this were to happen, how does this go down? And he's in this year 2 of a rookie scale contract, which means he's getting paid just under $10 million a year this year, less than Dylan Brooks, less than Spencer Dinwiddie. And so for David Griffin to not just trade Zion Williamson, but Zion Williamson, who's going to be locked up on a contract for the next five years, he's going to have to ask for the world, right? Yeah. So I don't know how feasible this is, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Tom, because so what would happen is Zion would then be eligible at some point, right, for his rookie extension, right? And then if he hits certain markers, whether that be all NBA, whatever, then it's a rookie max based on blah, 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 all that. Okay, so that's one piece. I mean, those things all seem in the realm of possibility, right? Like he'll probably make an all NBA team sometime very soon and be like in top 5 in MVP conversation probably sometime very soon. Okay. So there's that. What do the Knicks have to offer back in return that David Griffin's like, oh, yeah, sure. Take this franchise filler away from me. I don't think a whole lot when I want to look up and down that roster. RJ's got to be off limits because part of that's going to be, I assume, he wants to play with RJ. So that ain't going to work. Quickly, I guess. Your draft picks for the next 10,000 years. I mean, that's what I think is going to be like a Sam Presti type of situation, right? If you give all of your draft the next 5 years, sure, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, would ownership ever sign off on that deal, considering how many tickets that Zion Williamson sells? And I know it's a weird year, but there's a business side to this equation. Is not just like Anthony Davis, I don't think was filling the seats nearly to the impact that a Zion Williamson can. And if he loses weight, because I think part of this whole like Zion, why isn't Zion a bigger star this year? I think it's because like he's overweight. And so it kind of looks just weird watching him and being like, that's one of the best athletes in the world, right? You watch him go down the floor and you're like, man, he just like got out of bed after like 4 months of just eating chicken wings. And then he flies through the roof and just dunks on everybody. And my thing is like if he was as cut as he was at Duke and in shape, like, I don't care. Like that is the biggest star in the NBA right now. And for David Griffin and the organization to find a trade partner for him, that would get equal value in return, that'd be very hard to do in today's NBA. Secondly, if you're going to do that trade, if you're the Knicks, because you're not getting him in free agency after the 4-year rookie scale contract, he is a restricted free agent, which means the Pelicans have the right of first refusal, which means they're not going to just be like, yeah, I go sign with the Knicks. Like that's not going to happen. So when the part of the reason why all these draft picks are so valuable at the top of the draft is because you're not just getting them for 4 years, you're getting them for 7 years. And it's very, very rare that a team trades or loses a franchise caliber player that they draft. Kristaps Porzingis is like the rare exception that they traded him before they got
injuries had something to do with that, right? And then changing regime as well. You know, Greg dropped something in here that we're forgetting that Zion's a CAA client. And of course, CAA basically runs the Knicks, right? With Wesley and Leon Rose. The other interesting piece here too, Tom, that I think about is you mentioned Zion being a star for sure, 100%. He signed with Jordan Brand, as everybody knows. He is going to be given his own signature shoe, which Jordan Brand doesn't really just hand those out like, all right, yeah, get a signature shoe. And we know from our friend Ethan Strauss, from other just being around the business, we know the shoe companies pull a lot of these levers behind the scenes. How much influence do you think Jordan Brand and CAA can put on whomever to make this happen if they want it done?
They could. I'm trying to think, like, would Zion Williamson turn down that extension money?
Because Nike, like, Jordan Brand's like, we'll make it back to you on the back, you know.
Whatever. Yeah, like this is New York. You're going to be the biggest star in the NBA. You might be the biggest star in the world if we can get you to New York. But to me, well, Greg points out CAA, and full disclosure, my agent works for CAA too. So like, it's
you're like,
really weird for me to talk about here. But like JJ Redick was very upset with the front office about how that trade or non-buyout situation happened. And he said the agents that I worked with on this deal to go to Dallas won't trust. I don't know if they'll ever trust the New Orleans Pelicans front office. Those are strong words because Zion Williamson is a CAA agent or a CAA athlete. So it seems like that gets swept into that too. JJ Redick's not just talking about himself. He's talking about bigger fish in that aquarium that might be not happy about the situation. We have no idea if Zion's in the same boat as JJ Redick, upset with the front office. However, we have to discuss this because the Knicks are the Knicks, and they're putting together an incredible run here this season. And so how does Zion Williamson get to New York? It's even if you have those connections, right, of him loving Madison Square Garden and CAA being potentially allegedly upset about how that deal was handled, like it is going to be so difficult to get Zion to New York. So I kind of feel like this is a tease, right? Like it's a tease on Knicks fans.
It is. And it, because Knicks fans, I mean, God, I was talking to someone last night about this when the comments were made. I'm like, this is going to lead every one of those talk shows for the next 2 days. It's like, Zion's coming to New York. How do we make this happen? And people are going to go crazy. And it's like, to your point, it would literally take CAA, Jordan Brand have to flex a lot of muscle behind the scene to make a lot. They have it. They have muscle. I'm not saying they don't, but it's going to take a lot of all right, you scratch my back a lot, and then we'll make this happen. So who knows?
Right, like RJ Barrett has to be in that deal.
I mean,
like you're not gonna D Rose and Julius Rand. I mean, not Julius Rand. D Rose and Nerlens Noel and Emmanuel Quickly. That's not gonna get the deal done. You can throw all the picks for eternity, and that's not gonna get the deal done. So, it was. Watching him and Julius go at it yesterday was great. We actually got that matchup twice in the last week or so. And the Knicks are just, man, they're solid. They're so solid defensively. And it just goes to show that Tom Thibodeau's teams, if you have the right personnel, and I don't think Karl Anthony Towns is the same mindset as Tom Thibodeau, right? If those players are all locked in, like the Joakim Noahs, the Jimmy Butlers, the Taj Gibson, Derrick Rose, when they're locked in, they overachieve like crazy. So they're really good. And I don't know if you caught this at the end of the game. Tom Thibodeau was saying, that's just a great team, just a great win over a really solid Pelicans team. They're just really good. The only thing that's been their drawback this year is health. Great coached, well-coached team. Dave Van does a great job. I was like, health? Zion's been around all season long. Brandon Ingram's been around. Steven Adams has been healthy. Eric Bledsoe has been healthy. Maybe Lonzo Ball. But health, I don't think is the biggest problem with this team this year.
You know what that situation is. Coaches aren't going to badmouth their fellow brethren in there, right? So it's
and they're in the same tree. The Stan, the Van Gundy tree, very much so.
Exactly. What's interesting? You did mention there about Karl Anthony Towns not being the right fit. We know how that went in Minnesota, but more likely, Cat will be the more likely trade piece this offseason, right? And could he potentially, find himself in New York because they'll have the cap space? And does he get to a point where he's because, people's young guys, their attitudes change as time goes on, right? Yeah. When you're 21 and you act a certain way is not the same as when you're 25 or what have you. Has he seen the light in the past few years and is maybe that Thibodeau thing was smart. Maybe I do need to play better defense, and do the Knicks somehow make a play for Karl Anthony Towns? Maybe.
They could. We saw it with Jimmy Butler, where it wasn't necessarily that he wanted out of Thibodeau. It was more of a front office situation. And that kind of came back around, and Jimmy Butler and Tom Thibodeau reunited, and we saw that blew up shortly thereafter. They had a good year, and then everything went sideways. So it's obviously in today's NBA, we have to discuss anytime a star like Zion is attached, and you might say, oh, this is crazy. This would never work. This is all fantasy basketball stuff. But man, have you seen James Harden in Brooklyn and KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn? And oh, by the way, Anthony Davis and LeBron James won a title in LA. Think about that sentence. LeBron James and Anthony Davis won an NBA title with the Lakers. And now the team that's coming after them is Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin in Brooklyn.
Yeah. If I were to tell you that 5 years ago, you'd be like, what? That sounds crazy. But that's a larger point, Tom, that I wonder, we should probably get into too. These guys obviously want to play for good organizations and they want to play with other good talent, right? And the small markets always love to complain and moan. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. And it's we demand these players to be good at their jobs and develop and get excellent. How about you also be excellent at your job, right? Figure out how to find hidden talent It's out there. They exist. Lou Dort was available for anybody in the world to go find and get. Only Oklahoma City thought it was a good idea. Chris Boucher, same thing. These people are there. But for whatever reason, and I know why, like certain GMs have, the ability to do that while others are literally worried about getting fired every day of their life. So they do things that are going to protect themselves. But it's like, if these teams had the wherewithal and the right ownership to be like, I hire someone who runs basketball, I trust you to run basketball, we would have maybe a little bit less of this problem. But because we don't, we have owners who freak out every time like something comes out in the news. This is what we get. We get silly teams doing dumb things.
Speaking of really good teams doing not silly things, I just try to switch it up there, try to segue. Jarod, Kevin Durant leaves the game with another injury, and it's just, man, it feels like he can't get it going this year. Every time he comes back, he gets injured again. I looked this up. He has had one stretch this season in which he's played more than 3 consecutive games.
Yeah, that was early.
In January, mid-January, he had like a 6-game stretch, consecutive games played. And after that, it's just every start and stop. He can't seem to stay on the floor, Jarod. And this one seems a little bit more minor because it's just like a bruise or a thigh contusion, as they call it. Mm-hmm. So what's the latest there and what your feeling is about the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, in this latest injury here?
I mean, we got 15 games left of the season. So one of the things I always appreciate about the team when they talk about it is like, they've always looked at this long view, right? But you can tell, and the players all said it after the game, like, time kind of is a little bit running out for us, right? 15 games is, if we had 10 games, we feel pretty good, but we're starting to feel a little about it. I would say that this injury is slightly different in the sense that, yes, it's a tissue injury, but it wasn't one of those like non-contact tissue injuries, right? It was literally Trevor Ariza's knee smacking into his thigh, right? Like, so contact injuries are going to happen in basketball. It's a contact sport. So I feel about that one a little better, and the team does too, versus if it was just another one of him just running down the court and all of a sudden he started pulling up and felt tight. So I think they'll just monitor it today. I'm sure he's going to get a scan, see what's going on there. I expect him not to play tomorrow in New Orleans. But if it's, if all is well, Harden should be back Wednesday, possibly Friday. Look for them to be timed up to come back together around that time. And then really it's like pray to the injury gods. And it's like, we're done. Like you've used us all up this year because we can't take any more. Because they want to get on the court together and just not obviously for the chemistry. Like those guys like to play. They just want to play together. That's why they came here, is to play together. So they want to do it. Yeah,
but the basketball gods don't care about this. The basketball gods just want, LeBron to win every title here. It's not about the Nets, right? It reminds me of the Warriors season when they lost KD to the calf strain, then the Achilles, where DeMarcus Cousins was out for the Achilles tear, and then he finally comes back, and then Steph gets, it was like this, like they couldn't all come back on the same page and play. And when they did, it was just a disaster in the finals. And we forget Klay Thompson was coming back from an injury when he blew out his ACL. So, this is another reason why I just don't think that the Brooklyn Nets, we do this hypothetical when they get hurt, when they get healthy,
right?
I mean, they're going to be the title favorite. And that makes sense on paper, is the idea that they're going to be healthy for the playoffs. But we keep seeing this, is that they finally get healthy, they get on the floor, and then they have another injury. And the best predictor of injury is prior injury. So when you look at these hamstring injuries, these groin pulls, these soft tissue injuries that we're seeing across the league, this is a big deal because these kind of tend to crop up again and lead to other compensatory injuries where you're favoring one leg and then you just overdo it, just like we saw with Jamal Murray potentially when he blew out his knee. He was dealing with a problem in his other knee. And so I still think that the Brooklyn Nets, until they string together like 5-10 games where they're all playing together, I just don't believe that you can rely on them to come out of the East until we see that. And look, Philly's playing really well. Milwaukee's got Giannis back. And until those 3 guys are healthy, I can't put them above on my totem pole in the Eastern Conference.
Oh, and that's totally fair. And I think what I think is interesting is raise your hand if injury was the reason you had Brooklyn not advancing this year. Because that's not what most people thought, right? Most people thought oh, that's not going to work. They're not going to get along. That's not their issue. Like, they're fine on that end. It's dude just can't stay on the floor, right? That's the issue. And again, to your point, I mean, yes, we said it last week, highest ceiling. If they're healthy, yeah, no doubt, but that's a big if, right? We have zero idea what that's going to look like. And with the postseason, Tom, that's like 2x a regular season game or 2.5x, depending on what's happening. And benches and rotations get shorter. So you're only playing 33 minutes. You're going to play 38 or 39. Well, that's a thing that's going to potentially cause stress on those joints and on those soft tissue areas.
Yep, for sure. And he wasn't just the only one who got injured over the weekend. I tweeted out that earlier this morning, Judy, if you can pull it up, the fact that Donovan Mitchell badly turned his ankle, and it looked so much worse than it actually was in terms of the diagnosis. But here's a list of players that have missed games this weekend or had to leave games like KD did. LeBron, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, David Lillard, Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns, Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine, LaMelo Ball, Jamal Murray, Jaylen Brown, John Wall, Gordon Hayward, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kyle Lowry, and I couldn't even fit it in Pascal Siakam. All right. And then I didn't even put in like Rudy Gobert or Klay Thompson, of course, being out for the season. There's probably another 10 names that could be in that list as well. But this is starting to seem like the national broken association, Jarod, or the national backwash association, where it's like, man, it feels like, yeah, Lou Dort's playing amazing and Steph Curry's playing amazing, but against what kind of competition if like half the best 15 players in the league are just not playing anymore?
It is tough, man. And Henry wrote about this obviously in December. And, we're big proponents here, as are you, Tom, of the season's just way too long. Like, in general, take away this COVID, 82 games in a normal year is just too long, period. And I will fight anyone on that statement. It's just ridiculous. Too many games. And in this season, because all the NBA is concerned about is getting us back on the normal calendar for 2021, 2022, right? Well, in order for us to do that, we had to cram in 72 games into a really short amount of time. And the shortest offseason ever. Well, a person with a bare level knowledge of anything would have told you, oh, we're going to see injury rates increase. And sure enough, we have. And there are always people out there that love to point out the numbers aren't up. Every year you say the same thing, but it's not. And it's like, no, but it is, right? Like, it in fact actually is. You are seeing the rate at which players are being injured increase higher and higher. And it's something interesting that Steve Nash said in one of our post games. The Nets, not like, because all teams aren't this way. They put a lot in their sports science department and their recoveries. And because for them, it's all about not coming back, and the injury recovering. It's what was your strength prior to the injury? Yep. Can we get you back to that same point before you come back, right? It's not just about healing the hamstring. No. Get back to where you were before the hamstring got hurt. And that's their whole focus. He said that James, we and the sports science team, we rely on science. James wants to play. And it's this constant tug of war and push-pull between, no, dude, no, versus, yeah, but I got to hoop. And that's the challenge, right? Because it's also the culture of sport. It's macho and it's tough and we got to play and we got to be out there. Yeah, I get all that. But what good is it if you get out there and then 4 games later, well, the other one's blowing out now we're done. Like, tires off, see you later. Like, does that help anything? And it's a challenge and it's very difficult. And this is a problem in the NBA at large. And as the players get bigger, stronger, and faster, court dimensions are the same. People love to say, well, back in the 80s and 90s, those guys were tough and didn't whatever. And I'm like, stop with that stupidness, right? Like, the amount of knowledge we have about sports, about recovery and everything today versus 1989 is like coming out of like the prehistoric times and finding electricity. Like, come on, it's night and day. Like, so much more we know.
Right. And for all the plumber, like, the NBA is not a bunch of plumbers back in the 80s, but also if the guys are not working out in the off season and they don't have personal trainers and personal chefs and they're smoking menthols after the game, or maybe at halftime of the game, or drinking a beer after the game, like in the locker room, like, the players weren't the most physically fit that compared to today. Right. Like, it's not that there were a bunch of, Joe truck drivers or plumbers out there, but it's also true that they weren't nearly as conditioned or hyper tuned to their bodies like it is today. And the knowledge of how much sleep to get, what kind of sleep you need to get, whether it's napping in this schedule or that schedule or time zones and whatnot, It's such a different game physically too, where if you're Karl Anthony Towns, you're guarding out to the 3-point line. You're having to show on the pick and roll at half court when Steph Curry comes off a screen. Back in the 80s and 90s, you're camping out in the paint and yes, it might be more physical per minute in terms of just banging bodies, but man, it's such a different game on your joints and your muscles. It's so much different and more ballistic, as they say in the sports science areas. But I would say this. When you look at the way the NBA is structured right now, they wanted to cram in as many games as they could in this short time span. And all these players are resting on back-to-backs. You saw the Spurs got fined for not properly designating their resting strategy. You saw the same thing as with the Toronto Raptors is they rested players without an injury. And Kyle Lowry did it again, is like they put it in like these bogus injury rules where it's like, oh, suddenly this OG Anunoby has like a hip contusion or something like that. Let's just call it what it is. The NBA is not a back-to-back league anymore. It's not. The players don't want to do it. They want the money, but they don't want to actually risk their injury to play in those back-to-backs, or the teams don't want to risk their injury. It just doesn't make much sense. For the Toronto Raptors, they've already thrown in the towel, and it's weird because they're in the 10th slot of the tournament. But this is I think we're long past this point where I think the owners in a shortened season with 72 games, I think it's time for the NBA to really look at the fact that we need to just cut out the back-to-backs in the schedule. If we're going to come back next year and say we're going to try to do a full NBA season in terms of days, get it right on schedule, I think we really need to take a hard look at what this is doing to the PR of the league, because you do not want a league in which the NBA is on. I'm going to watch, who's playing tonight? Oh, it looks like Lakers Mavericks, but the Mavericks, why are they not showing Luke? Luke is resting on the second night of a back. And then LeBron's not. So it's going to be Dennis Schroeder, and then against Kristaps. He's out too. Yeah. You don't want that with your fans. To have the relationship with the product is that the stars aren't playing, or they don't want to play because they don't want to risk injury. That is kind of peeing in the pool, where once that gets in there, it's not going anyway until everyone gets out and reevaluates things. So I think the NBA needs to take a hard look at, let's just cut the back-to-backs out of the schedule. And Coach Thorpe mentioned it in pre-show, but something like 58 games where everyone plays each other twice, home and away, get rid of back-to-backs, and then we don't have to visit this conversation. Not to say the players aren't going to be resting, but we don't have to visit this conversation about second games on a back-to-back and hearing Fred VanVleet say, this is the most unpure season ever in the NBA. So yeah, Judy, what's if you could bring that quote up from Fred VanVleet, it's on the same topic, which is, man, this feels like a bloodless season where everyone's just going through the motions and not really playing for the joy or the love of the game, that it's become so business. So Fred VanVleet saying over the weekend, oh man, we just lost.
You're behind the paywall.
Shouts to the Athletic here. Basically saying this has been by far the most business oriented. They're just trying to get the money out of this season, and the players are, the bodies and the injuries are lining up, and it just feels like this has been a hard, but easy to say about the Toronto Raptors. I wouldn't say my passion has been taken away. That's probably a little bit too strong. Thank you, Judy. It's pretty much all business this year on every level, and it's hard to hide it. You know what I'm saying? The NBA is a great balance of like the pure love and joy of one of the best sports in the world mixed with big billion-dollar industry. And I think this year the industry side has taken precedence over some of the love and the joy. He says, to be honest, this is probably the most unpure year of basketball I've ever been a part of. Sorry for jumping around there. A lot of players out. People not wanting to play second half of back-to-backs. Spurs. Hey, there's Coach Thorpe. Hey, what's up? You do look wonderful today. Is that a nice pastel pink you're wearing?
Oh yeah, he's getting in the spring mode. It's been spring in Florida for like 6 months already.
It's pretty much like a hurricane season already. Literally, we're getting rain the next few days. Sorry, I couldn't even hear you guys most of it. So keep going. Let me just chime in when I hear you.
I love that you brought up to Tom what we talked about on Friday, which is the 58-game season, right? Because you play each team twice. And to be fair, as I said on Friday, shouts to our guy, Sam Esfandiari, because that's who I was talking to on Twitter about this. I was like, man, 65 games sounds about right. He's like, how about go a little 58, play everybody twice? I'm like, yes, brilliant. Think about it from the casual fan perspective, because that's who the NBA cares about, right? Not diehards and people, because we're already in. Okay. If you know I only play this team 2 times every year, you're, as a fan, you're 1000% invested in that. Oh, it's huge. And if you're playing 58 games over the same course of time, that's a ton of rest, recovery, and training. Well, we always love the European football model here, right? You play a game on Sunday, Monday's a recovery day, Tuesday you train, right? Like you're back into your cardio, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Wednesday you practice. There's a very like structured way to it so that you're able to repeat these high level efforts. If you have that in the NBA, you're going to have incredible gameplay on a nightly basis, because these guys are going to have the proper time to travel, get their bodies feeling good. You're still going to have injuries because it's a contact sport. We're not saying you're going to eliminate injuries, but what I am saying is I bet the rate of those non-contact sort of things, I bet you'll start seeing declines in those, because guys are actually strong. You know this, Tom. When you get fatigued, your technique falls apart. Well, when your technique falls apart, you're 1000% increasing your chance of getting injured. And this is what happens, right? Guys playing 48 minutes a night. Well, okay. This is, you're waiting for the pressure to break out of the dam. And I think that would be brilliant, and find a way somehow to keep those 58 games, to keep the money somewhere near. Sell more spots on the jerseys. I don't care. I know the local contracts are based on an 82-game schedule. I get that. But we have to find a way to figure out more revenue streams, whether that be changing the league pass product. There are enough smart people that are involved in this industry that you can figure out how to make up the shortfall of whatever it's going to be from the local TV contracts.
You know, there's a couple of things. So by shortening the season, you can play a little bit more. Like, for example, a midseason cup, right? It made no sense to me when I first started helping players in Europe, when they would talk about their cup games. I'm like, you mean friendlies? Like, what do you mean? I didn't understand what the concept was, but they're big deals. And there's lots of fun things you can do with these cup things, with these midseason tournaments. And then also, I wrote this in the document for Tom, at the end of the season, those that don't make the postseason, I'd love to see like an under 25 tournament with your rostered players that are under 25, pick a number, under 23, I don't care. And also your G League teams, because those are future stars. We need to develop them. Like the Pascal Siakams of the world and Chris Boucher, of course, that's the same team, but there's lots of young guys that came late, but in lots of franchises, we'd never hear from them. Right? Chris Middleton almost was just a below average player. I'm telling you, I once consulted with a team as a friend and asked them to acquire Chris Middleton, and we almost got him for nothing. Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
There's lots of those stories. So we need to give those guys
Butler could have been just
who?
Another player. Jimmy Butler could have been just another player if he didn't.
Right.
He didn't
Yeah. 30th pick. Yeah. So I think that'd be pretty neat. Also, listen, if you wanted to really argue over 65, I know, Jarod, you're not doing that, but there's another fun thing to do as well, which would be 58 plus, that you divide the NBA into 6 groups of 5. So if you were seeded number 1 the year before, you play the other 5, 1 seeds in the season, like other divisions, just so you see other people a little bit more. There's ways you can play it. But here's the thing, appreciating small little things. The big deal is, I don't know if you mentioned the ratings yet, Tom. Ratings are down for a reason, despite all the other obvious things, the big macro view. So if we get those guys back, and Jarod mentioned money, TV ratings, I think, will go up. There's where a lot of the money can come from right then.
Yeah. I mean, it also helps to point out that the New York Knicks being good again has not buoyed a huge run in the ratings where you'd be like, oh, we just got New York back. Like New York has been dormant for years, and losing that market, not having Carmelo Anthony and Linsanity and having that team be good in the NBA or relevant has been a huge drawback. And now you have the Lakers are good. The Clippers are good. The Knicks are relevant. Ratings should be through the roof. No, it's because stars are not playing nearly as much as they were like 10 years ago. Even if it's not injury related, it's minutes per game has been going down for stars, and just their availability has been tanking. So when you tune into an NBA game now, the chances of you watching 2 stars going at it are much lower than they were 10 years ago. And I'll also say this. If we're going to put all the ideas on the table, Coach, I think one of the things I would like to add on to your 58 game season, which has been, I think in the NBA space on NBA Twitter for a while, is the idea of playing one home and one away. But one thing I want to do, and I wrote about this last year, is give the home teams or the top 4 seeds in the playoffs the ability to pick their opponent in the playoffs.
Oh, I've been saying that too. I love that. Yeah.
It is so much more fun, right? Like the idea of like, if Utah Jazz get the number 1 seed or the Suns get the number 1 seed, they don't have to play Steph in the first round, right? They might pick someone else. And not only do they get the agency of picking their opponent and how fun that is, but also that's so much more fun from a competitive standpoint. It's like, imagine you're the team that the Jazz are like, yeah, we want to play you. Like, you're not telling me you have like an Empire State Building size chip on your shoulder after that?
And fans would freaking eat this stuff up. Are you kidding? That again, we're watching it regardless because this is what we do. But the casual, oh my God, wait, they're gonna pick who? Why? Like, they're go crazy. Like,
it's so true. That's a great point, Jarod. I never thought of it from the fan point of view. You're not just going to enrage the team you're picking. The Twitter fan base would be outstanding commentary. Hey, so let's get back to the money a little bit. It's fair to say, you guys, I know you have a relationship with players too. So let's just take, Jarod just did a video the other day on Drew Holiday. What exactly was his deal? Was it 4-year 160?
140 something with a chance to be 160.
Okay. So I mentioned on the show, I had the chance to work with him before he got drafted when he was 18 years old. All right. Now, we didn't talk about this kind of thing, but I got to know the young man pretty well. And as another 80 plus NBA players I've had, I promise you, 0 of them that I've ever had, I never had LeBron James, would argue that they could only sign for $105 million when they're 31 or 30, whatever Drew is. So if there's a little less money, but I get to play more games and not be injured, rehab sucks. It sucks for everybody at every age and level. If we tell you you're going to be paid a little bit less, the revenue streams are shared equally, just like we are, whatever you negotiate. But there's going to be less money for all of us, but you're going to be able to play more games. I don't think anyone would complain about that from the player side.
You think so?
I don't think they'll complain. No, they'll complain if the owners make the money. And they don't. But if there's just less of a pool for everyone because we're just trying to do a better product and have our stars play more, yeah, I think they'll understand. That's the trade-off you're giving. We don't want you rehabbing for 20% of your career or 30%. And let's be fair, most of these guys have families and they want to be able to run around with their kids. And we want them to be able to run around with their kids. Yeah. None of us want to enjoy a league that's just like the NFL that's destroying their future in many cases physically. There's a way to work it out. Jarod's right. There's enough smart people that if you can't get the money the same, you can get it close enough. And these players are still making a fortune. And now it's hard work to play. It's a fortune's a fair thing for the best in the world at something. We can compromise so that their health becomes our number 1 priority, which will be a good thing.
That made coach is right on. So we do the 58 and we add 7 to make it 65, right? And that's like the midseason Super UEFA Cup, but like not that because we can't steal it.
Yeah.
Someone's going to sponsor that, right? That's going to cost money to be the sponsor of or whatever. Well, guess what? That's another revenue stream. And the reason why, besides like the gambling aspect, football continues to draw ratings is, again, and I don't normally do this because, I'm always like, casual fan, who cares? But the reason why it works for them is because if you are a fan of the Steelers or whoever, I got to commit to 1 time a week. And I know what time it is. I know what I got to do. I can block off everything else in my life to fit in this 4-hour block. If you're only playing twice a week as an NBA team, that's not a lot to ask, right? Monday and maybe Friday or Saturday. Awesome, right? Like, I can work my way around that. It's so much easier than we got a game Sunday and Tuesday, then a back-to-back on Wednesday. Like, no, like you're not, you're just not getting involved in that. So anyway.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, we just talked about trying to think of outside the box on the schedule, but also there's this huge news, and I'm not a soccer fanatic at all, but man, this is all over my timeline. And if I was at a sports bar, I feel like this would be the number 1 topic at the sports bar. Someone explained to me how fucking huge of a story this is that the Super League is being formed.
It's huge. Like first of all, football is the largest sport in the world, like by far, and it's not close, right? Like they are that's the world's game. And to have the big clubs join this is just massive. And really what it's about is more dollars, right? I mean, this is, again, an opportunity to increase pots of money because whoever is, I don't know who's sponsoring it or whatever, but whoever's going to get all the naming rights and all, it's incredible. And you have the clubs that matter, right? Barcelona, Madrid, Man U, Chelsea, like all the clubs that actually matter in the history of European soccer are all involved. And it's a huge deal. It's been in the works. They've been talking about it for quite some time behind the scenes. Clearly the money is right, which is why, like, that anytime things like this happen, the first thing I say is, oh, the money must be right now, right? Like that's whatever, the money is right and we're doing it and it's going to be, hey, more football for us. I like it.
You think I would know this, having a financial interest in a soccer team, but we weren't invited to play in this thing. We're still in the second division in England in the Championship League. But are they dropping the Champions League? Is this in place of that, or in addition? Because I read it as a third league.
Yeah, I believe it's in addition to. I don't think they're dropping Champions.
So on this same topic, guys, I've witnessed this firsthand with our own club, both in Wales and then I went to North Carolina. Actually, I went to Cary, North Carolina for a week with our team a couple of summers ago. And these players are strapped up to lots of devices. Doctors are watching their computers every moment. The minute a player approaches that, what they call a red line, he's out. Like they don't let him do one more kick. So and these teams are spending a fortune on the science behind it, right? So there is some irony there that the leagues, at least in the Premier League anyway, is so sensitive to this, and yet they're playing a third league. My guess is they're going to feature. They have G League teams too. They're not called G League teams. Our under 23 team probably was very good, and it's very serious. They're minor league. They're younger players. They're cadet players. I would think will get more minutes, which is amazing because you'll develop them alongside the current stars. You always play better. You and I will play better tennis next to good tennis players, right? Or better basketball when we can move anyway. For me anyway. So I think that's part of it too. I wonder, do they want to develop more talent? Because remember, they can loan those players out for money. Yep. So as they develop that cachet of that player, that brand, they'll make money on that player because they'll loan them out for more than what they're paying them.
It just sucks like why James Wiseman has to either be vilified because he's not good enough to play with Steph and Draymond right now, but also not have the option to just play every day, learn the system in the same coaching tree. Like Santa Cruz, like a lot of these star players should be at Santa Cruz or the G League to try to learn the NBA system and get up to speed. Dude hadn't played 3 games. And Steve Kerr had a quote the other day, was like, I can't believe how raw he was. We should have been more on top of how raw he was by playing only 3 games of college basketball. And I'm sitting here like, you just said it. The dude played 3 games above high school before joining the NBA. Like, how did we not see this coming? Like, LaMelo Ball played professionally in Australia. And he looks worlds better this season, and it's a long career for the two of them. But we should have a system in the NBA where it's not like either James Wiseman plays with Steph Curry and fails, or he just doesn't play at all. Shouldn't happen.
I've been saying this for a long time. The G League is a weapon they're not utilizing very well.
It's also competing interests, right, guys? Like, and that's sort of what our challenge is here. You have incentives that don't line up. Coaches who literally are like, if I don't win, I'm getting fired. I got no time for development. Who's got time for that shit? I'm going to get canned. Well, okay. James Wiseman, get lost. I mean, not in Steve Kerr's case. He's not getting fired, but similar types of things. And also, let's not forget, and you know this, Coach, vets and guys like that, they're not in love with rookies getting developed. They're going to take my job, right? So it's this very weird, like, it's only the star player who's not worried about his job getting taken, right? Because he knows, Steph knows, I'm good. The rest of these dudes, I can get moved tomorrow because,
The NBA is so far behind in many respects. I pay a little more attention to baseball now because I read this book, The MVP Machine, and the way they utilize their minor leagues. And when I say the minor leagues as a way to show the major league progress versus the NBA, it's 1/100th of what they're really doing. There's so many more advances in baseball than there is in basketball on every level: player development, skill development, injury prevention, all of it. They're not perfect. They're so far ahead of the NBA. We don't use the G League well. You mentioned the Warriors. If I'm doing a show tomorrow and I'm doing a most improved list, Jordan Poole is greatly improved.
Yep.
He was god awful last year in Golden State. I liked when they drafted him. I mean, he was a rookie. He was terrible. He's moving towards not terrible. He's no longer terrible. I'm not sure he's good, right? But he's still got time. Let's just let him develop a little bit. They're not very good at it. It's just simple as that. They're not very good at it. And it's too bad because, guys, there's so much talent. There's so much talent just in America alone. Forget about the rest of the world, that we're not mining down to get them or pulling them up in our development plan as a league. And it's a shame.
I think it's a great thing that the NBA is doing this G League Elite, G League Ignite team where they're trying to bring up high school talent, amateur talent, and making them make money, allowing them to earn a living for their work, for their labor, and also get in the NBA culture, right? That the story that I saw about the Super League, it reminded me that, like, I think the biggest innovation in the basketball world that could be similar to this or have relevance to what we're seeing in the Super League is actually at the college level, where the NCAA thinks that they're like this invincible entity that no one's ever going to compete with. And then suddenly we have two of them in the past year with overtime and with the G League, and Australia are taking a lot of jobs that would go to NCAA and the blue chip colleges away from the Kentuckys and UNCs and Dukes of the world. So I think that's fascinating. I think that is where the innovation is happening is right before they get to the league and what these younger players are doing. And I think the NBA should absolutely try to get all of those players into NBA academies or into programs, much like they do in Europe. I think it would just serve the game so much better. And they're leaving money on the table just by giving it away to the Dukes and the Carolinas of the world. So they just really need to beef up their infrastructure on that level. One thing I want to hit on, I read this really amazing article in the New York Times about Scalabrini and Donald Foyle and who else was it? Mike Sweetney. We're talking about how guys are still trying to check them at the YMCA or whether it's LA Fitness or whatever runs that they're in. And they're just wrecking dudes, people thinking they could hang with former NBA players. And Scalabrini was the most recent one where there was film of some dude betting that he could beat Brian Scalabrini one-on-one, and Scalabrini just ate his lunch. It was just not even close. So I'm just everyone should read this story about, it went viral. I think, last week. Yeah. Just killing him. Scal just absolutely destroyed him. And it just goes to show that, like, these guys they're world class. They're so much bigger than you. Like, when you walk into a locker room and you see that, like, LaMelo Ball's 6'7", 6'8", it's just absurd how big these guys are. They're so much bigger than the average Joe, and they're so much more skilled now. Like, maybe 50 years ago, the average Joe could hang with an NBA player. Not anymore, Coach. Like, how often do you hear these stories where it's like, Coach, man, yo, these cats are trying to, like, play with me, and I'm just killing them out. Like, I can't play in these runs because, like, the LA Fitness run or the YMCA run, they just aren't on my level.
I mean, yeah, I don't get a lot of that for obvious reasons. Probably I do get a lot of the younger cats who are just trying to make it, who think they can play with these older guys, like a Jordan Poole and a Weissman, all these rookies who don't understand the difference. And it's not just a physical difference because I don't know how young this kid was with Scalabrini. I think he was pretty young. So that's the first thing, is these are literally boys playing against men. Scalabrini is a big dude. I can only imagine how big Sweetney was. His weight has been a big problem for Sweetney in the past. But their brain doesn't get fat, so they're processing so much faster. Watch a G League game as an example. When a team, for whatever reason, has a 26 or 27-year-old, they'll do the extra fake. They're not in a rush for stuff, and young players play like puppies. They jump at everything. So the skill level, that in every way, shape, and form, guys, the NBA guys are the elite of the elite. And I've told this story, I think, once before, where I had some young NBA players in my gym, and Kevin Martin was not retired yet. I'm not sorry, he had just retired. He had just retired that previous year. So he probably hadn't touched a ball, I think you told me, since January. So he'd been 1 year out. This was June. And he walked in the gym to actually visit my kid, Ryan Pannone, who was in town from Israel, front three coaching that summer. And these guys all played Kevin Martin on Y2K, whatever they 2K. So they wanted to see his funky shot, right? So I said, Kevin, you want to shoot for them? I felt like he was like an exhibitionist animal, but he's like, yeah, I'll shoot. So they were fired up to see this, silly shot. He goes to behind three. I said, when's the last time you shot? He said, January. This was June. He's like, I was at my middle school gym. I gave a clinic and I shot them. He goes 11 for 11 from 3, the ugliest shot ever. And he always had an ugly shot. The ball hit the rim 11 times every time. It rolled around the rim, went in 11 straight. All my guys afterwards tried to stay and make 11 straight threes. They couldn't do it. Now, these were not great shooters, but he just some guy, they don't forget how to do that. Yeah. They just have that kind of talent and all those reps from years ago. And I noticed this too in the pandemic. My first day back was May 1st. So I had a player come in May 1st. Me and Henry did a show about this. He had not touched the ball since March, not one time. He was in lockdown where his team was, right? And I don't remember if he made 14 or 16 or some crazy number of threes. And I did an article about this, Tom, basically saying shooting will come back fast. When we see the games in the bubble, I'm not worried about the shooting after what I witnessed. This guy had not touched a ball, literally not a ball in 2 months. And he made whatever was 13, 15, 14, and 16. Yeah, these guys are at a different level, man. And they're huge and long, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. Every year, one of my favorite things to do in pandemic, but we go to the finals and we play pickup with, some of the media runs, right? And Jarod, like I'm telling you, when like Smitty, like Steve Smith comes out and plays with us, or Brent Barry came out one time and played with us, we had to ban them from crossing half court. They're so good. Like they haven't played professional basketball in like a decade, and yet they're killing us. So we tell Smitty, we're like, you can't cross half court, and he's a point guard, and he's running the point guard, and he can't cross half court, and he's still dominating the game. His passing, his shooting. Brent Barry, like same thing. He's shooting from 40 feet away. These are high school gyms, so like it's not very far for them, and they're still dominating. Yeah. The ability to like see over a defense, you forget how tall Brent Barry is, but like it was nuts. I mean, Bones and Smitty were just dominating from 40 feet away. It's not even close how good these guys are.
It's one of my favorite things to do, to talk to, because we all have a bunch of various people in our life who are fans of sport and whatever. And if you're watching a game with them, they just make comments and say things, and you're like, do you even know what you're actually watching on television, or you just think you understand what's happening? And they have no idea. Like I was doing working on something, and I looked up. FIBA says they estimate around 450 million people play basketball at some variety of level in the entire world, right? 450 million. It's a lot of people. And I'm always like, guys, do you realize these people in this league, the 450 in this league, that is like 0.0000000. They are the best of the best. The worst guy in this league will destroy you in basketball. Yeah. Like
1 in a million, literally 450 million, and there's 450 in the NBA. That's one.
Right. How many Americans get struck by lightning annually?
Like, yeah, more than that. Like that's
right. You probably have a better chance to be struck by lightning, maybe twice, than make the NBA. I'll give you one last thing on it. I was talking to my son recently. Their season's down at Florida State. They have the tallest team in the league. Okay, they're going to be taller next year. They'll have 5-some footers next year. But last year they were the tallest team in the NCAA. And I asked about him playing, and he said, yeah, we're playing pickup. And I said, who's playing? He said, well, when I can, I just try to play with some of the walk-ons, the managers, the grad assistants, and some guys locally here who play Division I but live in Tallahassee, because then I can just like jump over guys and shoot and score. And it's like, but when you're playing with your team every day and half the guys are 7 feet tall or 6'10" or bigger, it's just not as fun a game. Like you're still enjoying the game, but it's very different. My son's 6'3" and shoots, right? He can shoot down to 28 feet. It's not fun playing against these gigantic, tall, long men all the time. Well, Chris Paul's made a career of that, right? Like think about the talent it takes to be that amazing. I remember writing about Trey Burke one time. He's not even 6 feet. He was the best player in college. And I give that huge, it's like Iverson, like those guys, it's so impossible. Talk about, that's like being struck by lightning 5 times. To be that
Coach,
tiny, that good.
I still think to this day, my hottest take is that Muggsy Bogues being a good NBA player is the most amazing professional feat in sports. A 5'3" basketball player, not just making the league, but being good in the NBA, like doing what he was doing in the NBA is akin to like a blind person being able to hit a fastball every single night. Like it's like statistically, it's almost impossible to see a 5'4" guy, a 5'5" guy even make the league, much less have a long career. And like, it just goes to show how ridiculous that story was. And it's a big reason why he's right over my shoulder over here.
He was on the best high school team of all time too, by the way, probably. If you go back to his high school, that team might have been the best of all time that he played. There's a few great ones. That alone was a strange, unique enough. Yeah. If he had just done that and stopped, it would have been amazing. A 5'3" guy in the best high school team of all time. Yeah. But he kept going. Incredible.
It's a game of giants. And he's very short compared to the average American. Yeah. And he's still doing very well. So, anyway, so last couple minutes here, I want to just say Steph Curry's very good at basketball.
Yeah, you think?
He dropped 47 on Saturday. He left the game with a sore, or not left the game, but he had a sore ankle. Who knows if he plays tonight? But Liz
he could win the score. He could be the scoring champ, right?
Yeah, and like this is what I predicted and said. Like Wiseman and Oubre are the only things holding back from an amazing historic season from Steph, because when they're not on the floor and you just sub in guys who know how to play or know how to like get him the ball. It's just, what do you do with that guy? And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. I hope we see it in the playing game.
Yeah,
I think we will.
They should make the play-in. I mean, are we surprised? Like this is what this guy does. We did it on Friday actually on the show. I was just like, we do this thing where it's like with the litigate like his career every season, and it's like, dude, the dude's won multiple MVPs, 3 finals. Like what are we? There's nothing to litigate. No,
yeah.
Talk about lightning striking. Yeah, talk about lightning.
We're good.
Come on,
that
dude.
It is still insane to me that Steph Curry was happening and the Steph mania was happening in the NBA, and Steph Curry still could not get a D1 scholarship. Like could not get Duke or Carolina to watch him. And then suddenly Steph Curry's, one of the best 3-point shooters ever in the NBA and playing really good minutes on really good teams. By the way, before we go out, my top number 1 draft pick of the Final Four, can we get to it quickly?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go with Philly as my number 1 team to make the Final Four. Coach, what do you got?
I'm going to go Clippers.
All right. I'm going to go – actually, Jarod, take your next pick. I want to hear yours. If Philly and Clippers are off the board, who's going to make the Final Four?
Utah.
I'm going to go with, for the 4th and final spot, Milwaukee. I don't have Brooklyn.
Or Boston, who's on a roll right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Milwaukee's lack of depth worries me. I'm watching their bench every game now.
Yeah. I still have them at my 4 slot here now that Giannis is back. And Steph Curry says time's up. Judy, thank you for hanging with us. Jarod, thank you for jumping in early today. Coach, we'll do this again next week. Talk to you guys on Friday, if not Wednesday, if something crazy happens. Thank you for joining us on Bring It In Monday.